Morning, guys, or if you're watching in the afternoon, even whenever works for you. Happy Monday. It is December 13th. We are at the tail end of the year, man. Thank goodness. Just want to say before you watch today's episode, thank you again to everybody for your patience with my delaying things. I owe JJ an apology for that. I owe everybody associated with the NWA brand, be it a champion or not, an apology for that. And it's coming off more disrespectful than I truly intend. I love this championship. I love this brand. I believe in the NWA brand, and I believe in the vision of what's to come. And I really wanted to give it the proper respect, and I allowed it to fall by the wayside. And that's 100% my fault. I enjoy the episode. I spent hours editing it and having to chop things up because of things we've canceled or rescheduled since we originally taped this episode back in October. So I hope you guys enjoy the effort that I put into it and enjoy the final presentation. Don't forget tonight after Monday Night Raw, wherever you watch it around the world, hopefully you watch it at 8 o'clock Eastern, because then you can watch Aaron's recap over on NoDQ.com. And then, of course, after that on NoDQ.com, on my network, Championship Network, and on the Constantine Studios, you can check out Talk Wrestling Live. We'll be talking about Monday Night Raw. We'll be talking about Ask Me Anything segment. We'll be talking about the hiatus for Ring of Honor and our first of our viewer polls in a long time. I haven't done one of those in a while, and I really want to get your guys' opinion because it was all over social media this weekend, this particular question. So tune in tonight after Monday Night Raw, after Aaron recaps Raw, to talk wrestling. But for now, enjoy the dads, JJ and I, not always on wrestling, ranking our top 10 NWA World Heavyweight Champions of all time. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to the Dads, not always on wrestling, here on the Jeff Feature Network. But yes, I do have the Constantine Studios tagged because this particular show, it was really a major collaboration of both brands. And a lot of what you're going to hear today took place during the genesis, if you will, of the Constantine Studios that evolved into the Jeff Feature Network presentation you see today. So, having said that, I am Jeff Meacham. He is the Renegade JJ Williams. And Matt J, you know, it's funny. We were talking off air about our different, timelines of coming into the business as a fan and whatnot, but there is no more prolific, more historical championship in this industry than the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. And, we joke, you and I, quite a bit that, if Vince McMahon doesn't, buy out his father and, take over the world in the 80s, we don't sit here. Well, if a group of promoters back in 1948 don't get together in Waterloo, Iowa and decide, we better get our shit together or we're going to have too many cooks in the proverbial kitchen and we're all going to go belly up, we don't sit here either. So the NWA is huge for us, huge for the business, and despite belief to the contrary many times over the years, it ain't dead yet, brother. It's alive and well.
Very much so, very much so. There have definitely been times when it's been on life support.
Oh, yes. And we'll talk about that.
But it always ends up rising like the phoenix.
Yes. And
I think that's the best analogy you can make because, back during the Crockett era, we thought it was going to have its demise, but it came back. Granted, a certain franchise player winning the belt in a tournament and then throwing it down to the ground probably didn't do a whole lot.
No.
But it still brought recognition. It got water cooler talk. People were talking about what Shane Douglas did when he won the NWA title. Now, I think it's safe to say it's not on either of our lists. No,
we love Shane, but
I did contemplate it for a split second just because without him winning that tournament and the NWA strap, there is no Extreme Championship Wrestling.
This is very true.
So for that cause and effect, I contemplated it. He would have been like number 10.
Right.
But he didn't make my list. But then, out of that, we had the Candido One tournament, which that lineage left pretty good lineage, all the way up until basically the TNA era.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was very much if you blinked, you missed the champion in your area of the country because it didn't go a whole lot of places beyond the man in the octagon. So, and I'm sure one of us will talk about him, if not both. But yeah, it's almost been like we've been reminded, like, oh, that's right, it still exists. Every time it popped up, in between the Shane Douglas era, Shane Douglas moment, and the TNA era. Oh, that's right. I forgot all about that. That's where that started. Right. And that's kind of how this list is going to go today. So it's I will say this before you get started. I know because you're going to go first because it's a wrestling show. So honorable mentions is pretty much everybody you don't hear today.
Yeah.
Because they all in their own way contributed to the lineage, the history, the controversies, good or bad. And, for whatever reason, that group of people that decides who's going to wear that championship decided that person's going to wear that championship. So,
yeah,
for better or worse, you've only got, a certain amount of people, so anybody beyond my 10, his 10 definitely deserve at least an honorable mention.
Yeah, definitely. If that governing body felt that the talent was worthy, then goddamn it, they were worthy.
Oh, yeah.
For whatever reason.
Right.
They
exactly.
were worthy.
Yep.
But like I was saying, after the Shane Douglas, Chris Candido, Severn era, we had the TNA era.
Yes.
And then kind of the Resurrection era, which started with Pierce all the way up to Trevor Murdoch today.
Yeah, and again, people will usually, and again, I don't know how you quantify, what means what here, but they usually quantify it as Pierce to Pierce, because of the thing what happened in Australia. Like I said, we'll get into the 7 levels of hate, I'm sure, in great detail later on today, but everything post that has definitely been kind of hit or miss until a man who is fond of Smashing Pumpkins definitely took the reins, if you will, in October. Not enough, the Pumpkin guy in October. Just funny how that works. But it's been an interesting 4 years, to be sure. And I'm sure we'll get much more into detail about him later. But
which, full disclosure, y'all know we like to film in advance. It's October 1st as we're filming this December episode. So,
which is why Jeff can't find his Santa hat to save his ass because it's in storage.
In October, I just felt I had to bring that up, that it is October 1st as we're filming this. It all ties in. We like to weave stories here on the Casa
very much do.
And Jeff Meacham Network.
Yes, always with the weaving. So yeah, it's and again, we say this term and we throw it out there like Halloween candy, subjective. Like, you think you're going to see your subjective, and please, if you agree, disagree, whatever with what either of us say, right over there, kids, if you're watching this on Friday afternoon, the 10th, if not, right there, brother, underneath us, it's all good. Either way, let us know what you think, because I think this list with wrestling fans is very much going to be but what about that guy list? So with that being said, I turn the lectern, if you will, over to the man who today at least has deemed himself a historian in training. Renegade, take it away.
I try when it comes to the NWA, because as I mentioned to Jeff off camera, the NWA World Heavyweight Championship is my favorite belt.
Absolutely.
It is the only belt I have ever owned twice, as I did at one point have to sell it in order to make money for rent. My Razor era NWA Championship, if you will. I joked with him off camera that no disrespect to this belt, which he got for me, but this is the fake NWA title. The one that I had to sell was the real NWA title, a la Sean Razor. And if you get it, you get it. And if you don't get it, why are you on this channel?
Peacock is your friend if you don't.
So it's the only belt, like I said, that I've owned twice. I had to sell the one that had all my signatures acquired on it, and there were some damn good signatures on it.
Yes, and I'm sure we'll get to most of them today.
A few of them are on my list.
Yes, as they should be.
So I'm going to try to be the West Coast professor in training here for this list.
I feel like my today all of a sudden. Except I'm not.
Belt does mean a lot to me.
Yes, and like I said, a lot of this was during the genesis of the studio. So definitely a huge thing for our friendship, and our business relationship revolves around the phrase, the 10 pounds of gold.
Exactly. So my number 10 is it's the man who defeated the vile opponent, the man who defeated his arch rival, Colt Cabana.
Boom, boom. I love it.
With 2 reigns totaling 152 days, I don't think I've ever enjoyed watching the inevitable happen, because when Colt defeated Pierce, it was like sitting there watching David defeat Goliath.
Yeah.
You never thought that day was going to come.
No.
And to see him finally do it in that studio in Hollywood, California.
So good.
And for us to be there,
I know.
It was just one of those moments.
Both times he became champion. Actually, well, he was a 3-time. He ended up being a 3-time champion, but the first 2 he won, actually in the studio here in Hollywood, won at the Regent, won at Glendale. Oh my God. I watched back that match at the showcase with Knox and everybody, including my God, white meat, baby blue wearing baby face Joey Ryan coming out to celebrate. It's like, whoa, let's do the time. Anyway, like Jiminy Christmas. But it is a moment in time for Colt and for us as fans. So great.
I mean, I've seen many a title change hands live and in person.
course.
But that was the first time I saw the NWA title change hands.
Okay. Wow.
Because I never went to any TNA shows.
Right.
So it was a moment for me. Like you say, it was a time capsule.
And when you think about it, Jay, that was over 10 years ago, which is
so
crazy to think. That was a decade ago. That was really the start of the infamous 7 Levels of Hate. Was that moment in Hollywood?
And Colt is the most recent champion that's going to be on my list. Everybody is going to be prior Colt.
Wow, there you
go. Mainly because since the Colt Pierce rivalry, I haven't really kept up with it. So I don't feel like I can sit here and wax philosophical about the champions that have come since then.
Right.
And I haven't seen any of it.
No, and it wouldn't do justice to the people involved if you blew smoke up your ass and just this guy was training this many days, so he's a great. It's like that's not, having not seen it, right? Exactly, having not seen it, that wouldn't be fair. So
as is evident by my number 9 person. My number 9 person only had one reign with the belt.
Okay.
Totaling 88 days. But when he raised that belt over his head, Extreme ruled one more time.
Oh, wow. Nice. That's a cool shot, too. I like that.
Raven. Scott Levy finally proved all his naysayers wrong, especially the ones that resided in Titan Towers.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that out loud. I appreciate that.
Because Paulie knew what he had. That's why he was a multi-time ECW champion.
Yep.
But you think about it, outside of ECW, where was Raven really given that opportunity?
Exactly.
He wasn't.
No. And that's a damn shame, because even in TNA, when he became champion, I should say, at King of the Mountain, it's the anniversary, if I'm not mistaken. It was a brief thing, and the way they took it off him was so stupid. With D'Amore and up in Canada, it's so lame. And again, I'm not shitting on Scott. I'll never shit on Scott D'Amore on my show ever. I love Scott, but the booking on that was horrific.
And let's point out Renegade here in full-on Mark mode with the leather jacket, the flannel around the waist.
I was going to say,
I can't see the t-shirt, but I believe I'm wearing a Captain America t-shirt.
That's tremendous.
Cut off shorts, which you can't see
yeah.
because of the way that it is there. But yeah, Renegade in full-on Mark mode, and Raven giving me and the camera the big old bird, the FU.
Yeah, pretty much. Scotty doing Scotty things,
I was going to say, if that's not Scott being Scott, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, right. If Raven is flipping you off, you must have caught him on a Euphoria day or something, because it's Anyway.
Sticking during the TNA era, like I told Jeff off camera, the NWA TNA era really was my era for the NWA title.
Absolutely.
Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is debatable by the millions and millions of wrestling fans out there.
Yes,
but
for sure.
That was my era. That was the NWA Championship, being able to see it on weekly pay-per-views, and then Impact and all that, all the way up until it became the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, and they severed their relationship with NWA.
Right.
That was my exposure to the belt on a prominent basis.
Okay.
So this whole little area right here, Raven, and then my next 3 are all from the TNA era.
Well, here we go. Spoiler alert.
Well, and that's part of why they're this low on the countdown, is because, the way the pendulum swings back and forth with the TNA era with fans. I wanted to try to be fair here.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Number
yeah,
8, my number 8 had 2 reigns with the belt, totaling 245 days. And I feel like this man really redefined himself and elevated himself to a main event player thanks to the 10 pounds of gold. Christian Cage.
Very cool. Love it. The instant classic. I love it. Great stuff.
You know, it was this era of Christian that made everyone realize that there were 2 main event players in the tandem of Edge and Christian.
Most definitely. Good call.
You know, everyone always talks about when tag teams break up, who's going to be the Shawn Michaels, who's going to be the Marty Jannetty.
Unfortunately, yes,
for the longest time, Christian looked like he was destined to be the Marty Jannetty of Edge and Christian.
Right.
Until he went to the NWA, said, hold my beer, became champion, and proved that, once again, just like with Raven, proved everybody in Titan Towers wrong. That he had just as much marketability and talent and in-ring ability as his brother Edge.
Yep. And I will say this, he's on my list. Let me just say this about Christian real quick. When you think about it, he was the last TNA contracted superstar to be recognized as NWA champion by the NWA board. Because he went into that pay-per-view Sunday thinking he was going to defend the 10 pounds of gold. And he did. It just wasn't the NWA championship by the time the match started. Because Trobich and the board were, we're good. Like, nothing against you, Christian, but TNA's pissing us off. We're done. So, yeah, Christian was the guy that the board was okay with. They just didn't get enough title defenses out of the TNA superstars. So they made a decision they had to make, unfortunately. And it was just, it's funny when you think about that image of Kurt Angle with the 10 pounds of gold over his head. Like, imagine what could have been Kurt Angle as NWA champion.
Right.
But even still, we got 2 times with Christian. And if you think about it, within a year, he's back with WWE, winning the WWE CW championship. And then off he went to the freaking stratosphere after that. So he was world champion. And granted, would he have been world champion without Edge, retiring? We'll never know because we didn't get that opportunity. But, the fact that he's had a Hall of Fame career more so since then than prior to, you figure he, as of this taping, is still the Impact World Champion. Bound for Glory is on the horizon. We don't know, again, we're taping 2 months in advance, kids. But the fact that not only did he sign with AEW as an Impact player, wink, wink, but the decision was made to go through the forbidden door and have him be the guy to not only win the Impact Championship, but to deal Kenny Omega a clean loss on AEW television. That shows how much faith Christian has had invested in him by people outside of that big giant building in Connecticut that's going to be demolished at some point. Impact player, to be sure. And again, I say wink, wink. He is what TNA dubbed him, an instant classic, and he should have been world champion way before that.
Yeah, he should have. My number 7 is honestly the first NWA World Heavyweight Champion that I ever met.
Oh.
And I met him in the confines of a little sweatbox out in Hollywood.
Okay.
And dare I say that this man is simply phenomenal and has only become more so since then.
Most definitely.
Once again, Renegade in full-on Mark mode with his AJ Styles t-shirt, his sleeveless hooded vest, and his 10 pounds of gold, which AJ signed for me that night.
And that shows how
first signature that was on the historic belt of mine.
And that's how far back we go with AJ Styles. Throw it back up there one more time for me. I promise I won't be making fun of you. I promise I won't. But look at that. AJ Styles freaking ringer baseball tee. Let's throw that on the freaking fire for a minute and talk about that. Because that was like AJ Styles 2002 era shirt. Like, god dang. We go back with this fool just a hair. Like,
I want to say that was 0405 shirt.
Maybe, but even still,
because you got to think in 02, he was still wearing his X Styles t-shirt.
That
looked like the X Styles logo. And I still want that shirt. That is the one AJ shirt that I always wanted and never got. The X
awesome.
Styles.
I love that. Yeah. And it's funny, you know, at some point next year, we're going to do our top 10 X Division champions of, you know, obviously TNA. He was the first champion to bring it to PWG. And I get that picture of me. It's fuzzy as hell because I had to freaking edit the hell out of it. But yeah, with me like this, it's because of AJ. Yeah, AJ, multiple time guest on the no DQ properties, if you will. We love that guy on this show. We talk about him all the time when it comes to lists and, you know, champions and whatnot. People forget he was the NWA champion because he was such Mr. TNA, and they distanced themselves so quickly from that brand once the split went down. People forget.
3 reigns totaling 196 days. You know, AJ at the time was positioned to be the franchise player. Like when you looked at TNA, it was Jarrett and Styles.
Yes. Yep.
The old school and the new breed, if you will.
Nice. I like that. Good reference. Very good.
You know, AJ was being positioned at the time to be their Cena, their Orton.
Yes. Yes.
And unfortunately, once the, as you called it for AEW, you know, the forbidden doors in TNA opened and all the ex-WWE talent started to come in, the originals like AJ kind of got pushed back to the side.
Yep. Which was bullshit.
Imagine this, if you will, for those of you that did not watch TNA during this time, and for those of you that did, I'm sorry for bringing up this image. AJ Styles in a Ric Flair robe.
On
AJ
the first
Styles
Impact,
third to Christian, behind Tomko, who was Christian's second.
Yeah, that's how
AJ
far.
Styles as the second to Kurt Angle.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I rest my case.
Yeah. Everything. Yeah, it's funny how he was Mr. TNA, right? And
literally,
once, they called him that in marketing tools, right? Once TNA completely separated from the National Wrestling Alliance, AJ was the proverbial, okay, he's the guy in the turkey suit this week guy. Like, no, it's AJ Styles, man. Come on, Dixie. You know better. Come on, everybody else. You know better. You know, here's, again, I'm talking about one of these guys later on, so I'll briefly weave into him. When they had that match between AJ and the man who would go on to become a national treasure later on in life, and he beat AJ, and Dixie let AJ get away, and he went to Japan and went, what do you got for me? And they went, here, take what you need. And the WWE went, same thing, you know, debut in the Rumble, world champion by the end of the year, you know, still 1A, 1B worldwide. And it's all because of him holding the 10 pounds of gold back in 2003 and onward.
Yep. Number 6.
I say that so passionately because he's also not on my list, believe it or not. So,
wow, I'm surprised. Number 6 on my list is the end of the TNA era with me. And you can't talk about the TNA era of the NWA without discussing Mr. My World himself. 6 reigns, totaling 1,006 days. You cannot argue that Jarrett was the face of the NWA TNA era.
Oh, definitely not.
For better or for worse.
Yes.
He definitely represented the 10 pounds of gold. And where most heels were smarmy and try to get out of stuff, which he did on occasion, Jarrett was actually a fighting heel champion.
Very much so.
Jarrett was willing to take all comers that they threw at him, regardless of who the commissioner or the general manager or whoever it was that was running the on-screen figurehead position at the time, be it
Director of Authority
or Cornette or Russo or whoever. Jarrett took them all on, and he was that heel champion that you chomped at the bit waiting to see him lose.
Yes. And
that is the mark of a great heel champion, in my opinion.
100%. As Jeff would say on his own podcast.
If they can keep you tuning in week after week to see who is finally going to dethrone them, they're doing their job. At the end of the day, it's what they've been doing with Roman. You know, by the time this goes up, he could have been defeated. We don't know. But that's what they've been doing with Roman Reigns. Who is finally going to be the one to dethrone him as the head of the table?
And that's what you want in your champion. You want the fans to salivate at the chance that it could happen
on any given night.
Yep. Not
whether
just
it's
Sunday
Raw
either, folks,
or SmackDown or a pay-per-view.
Yep.
And you don't want to make the mistake that WCW made by hot-shotting it.
Oh, God, no.
Looking at you, Goldberg Hogan.
JJ appreciates my hatred of Goldberg, and I love him for that. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, I don't despise Goldberg to the
I know
levels that you do, but just because they were in Goldberg's home was not the reason to pull that trigger.
No.
Okay, so maybe you beat Raw 1 week. Guess what? The next week, they went back to kicking your ass.
Mm-hmm.
You save it for the pay-per-view where people are paying their $30 to see it.
Yep. Terrible. Anyway, that's a whole other show.
Yeah. And
I didn't say you hated Goldberg. I just said you appreciate my hatred, which is totally, totally different thing.
My number 5, we get into some of the classics. And even though some of these champions were before my time, I've seen videos, I've seen DVD, I've seen the network before the network was Peacock crap.
Literally.
So I've seen some of these reigns, some of these title defenses. So I feel like I can honestly rank them this high because without at least 3 of these next 5, the last 5 would have never happened.
Makes sense.
Number 5, believe it or not, only had 3 reigns with the NWA title, totaling 107 days.
Yep.
But it's definitely one of those faces and names that you think of when you think NWA champion. The American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, baby.
One of the regrets I have is not having a picture with him to this day. Ugh.
To me, looking at those stats, Dusty Rhodes and the NWA title was Mick Foley with the WWF title.
Yep, exactly.
He may not have been the guy destined to carry it for hundreds of days, be your long-term champion, but he was the guy that could take the ball, run it a few yards, move the ball along and get things done when they needed him to.
Exactly.
You hear Mick Foley talk about it all the time in interviews. He was never going to be the guy to take the ball, run it in for a touchdown.
Right.
But, gain a few yards, run it out of bounds so that the ball can move up, maybe get the first down. That's Foley.
Absolutely.
That was Dusty.
Yeah. Dusty was never going to be the guy to, carry the entire program for the year, but he'll jump in at Starrcade and challenge the champion all day, every day.
Yeah. And I'll always remember this day because, like I said, AJ was the first signature I ever had on the belt. And at the time I met Dusty, he was the only signature I had on this belt.
Great story. Go ahead,
and
dude.
Dusty saw it, and he's like, whose signature is this? And I was like, it's AJ Styles, sir. He's like, that's a good one to have.
Yep. Such a Dusty moment.
Stuck with me for a couple reasons, because on the one end you could think, okay, it's this legend kind of being sarcastic, but Dusty was hands-on in the NWA TNA era. Dusty knew what lied within AJ. So for Dusty to give that recognition, that's a good one to have. He knew where AJ was going.
Oh yeah. Yeah. When you think about, Dusty in TNA, whenever you tell that story, I think of Paul Heyman's story with Dusty, where Paul, kind of snuck into the meeting, wasn't really supposed to be there. And Dusty, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm here for the show. No. What are you doing in my production meeting? This is for the production. I'm here to learn from you. Well, good. Sit back. I'm a super genius. You will listen to me. I can do it, man. Just like he was so like, good idea. Good idea. I had to have you sit in the room there, Paulie. Dusty helped seriously book the early days of TNA. So the rise of AJ Styles was very much helped along there by the American Dream behind the scenes. So for him to say that's a good one to have, just in the Dusty drawl, like, well, yeah, it makes sense because he helped book it. So it's and the fact is, in that one sentence, in that throwaway comment in the middle of a freaking comic book store in the Lakewood Mall, Dusty Rhodes approves AJ Styles, puts his stamp of approval on the phenomenal one.
And let's once again admire JJ with his Hot Rod t-shirt and his Word Life hat.
With the NWA championship. And yeah, that picture is just a big giant. Here it is for the week. What the fuck? Anyway. Yeah. Let's see. He's wearing a Roddy shirt, a John Cena hat with the 10 pounds of gold in RVD's store with Dusty Rhodes. Anyway, carry on.
You could argue to counterpoint that I'm wearing a Piper shirt, someone from Dusty's era.
Okay.
The Word Life hat, which was the old school block WWE logo minus the F.
True that.
Dusty's era. With the NWA belt that Dusty had.
Fair enough.
So while on the surface it definitely seems like a what the F Renegade, counterpoint there, it does kind of make sense when you think about it.
Definitely. It does.
When you really break it down a little bit.
Well, now we're going to whole other, if you're going to start breaking stuff down in WWE, and never a whole other topic.
My number 4 is the only one to come from that, if we will call it the Shane Douglas, Chris Candido era of the NWA title. And while I never saw this man defend the title, when you look at his statistics, how can you not put him at least in the top 10, let alone top 5? And I'm talking about Dan Severn.
Absolutely. 100%.
2 reigns totaling 1,559 days.
Yeah.
One of those reigns alone was 1,479 days, which is the 3rd longest reign in history behind Lou Thesz and Dory Funk Jr.
Absolutely.
Severn did what TNA wanted Shamrock to do. However, no disrespect to Shamrock. Shamrock failed where Severn succeeded.
Yeah.
They took
I agree with that.
Ultimate Fighter to help legitimize the National Wrestling Alliance Championship again.
Yeah, exactly.
Had it been the Shamrock from 98 that had that monster feud with Rocky and then took the IC title when they had that tournament for the vacant strap, Shamrock might have been able to do some stuff with the NWA belt.
Absolutely.
But Shamrock got that belt 4.5 years late.
Yeah, he did. Definitely.
Only held it for 2 months before losing it to the Truth.
Yeah. And, people are going to kind of come down on that decision. And Severn's on my list, too, for what it's worth. Because he didn't defend it a hell of a whole lot during that first 1,000 days or whatever. So I get it. But, just because he had commitments in UFC and other promotions, the NWA didn't have to make him champion. They just did. So, not his fault. Just saying, guys. Just saying.
Number 3 on my list is number 3 for a number of reasons. Okay. But the number 1 reason why my number 3 is the number 3 is because he wrote Shotgun in Our Van. The Scrap Daddy.
Yeah. Yeah, buddy.
5 reigns totaling 1,078 days. Dare we say that Pierce brought the 10 pounds of gold back to glory?
Oh, there's no dare about it. That's a shoot.
And that picture was chosen on purpose so we can give a shout out to our homie Angelo Trinidad, the ring announcer there announcing him.
It's funny you mentioned Angelo. He was at the Hall and Nash signing I went to. I hadn't seen Angelo in how friggin' long. And it was like, oh shit, Angelo's here. Of course, Angel's hat because Angelo. But it was so cool to see him. And I did not shout him out of the show after that taping. So after that signing. So Angelo, it was great to see you, but it's great to see you pop up on this show at all because, as much as Marquez, Pierce, Cabana, all those guys are part of our framework that started this for us, in the era that we were going to the NWA shows. Angelo was the voice, man. So
let's not forget in that group of names, may he rest in peace, John Ian.
I was going to say, we actually, he and I talked about John that day because, again, he's our Angel stuff, so we go into John Ian talk. That whole, we were we talk a lot in LA that we're spoiled sports announcer wise. We NWA Hollywood fans and SoCal wrestling fans period were very spoiled with ring announcers. Angelo, John Ian, guys like that, Ben Thomas, those guys really, set the stage each and every month for us. Whenever that 10 pounds of gold was on the line, you knew it was on the line because the ring announcer let you know how important it was. And that's the role of a ring announcer. And those 3 guys in particular, Angelo, Trinidad, John Ian, and Ben Thomas, all really made some serious important shit's about to go down. Anyway, Pierce.
I completely agree. I've said my Pierce. I've said my piece about
my Pierce piece, yeah.
But I mean, like I mentioned when we were talking about Colt Cabana, and like I mentioned about Jeff Jarrett, he was that heel that you came back week in and week out to Championship Wrestling from Hollywood.
Oh my God!
Or wherever he was wrestling as the traveling champion that he was, because you wanted to see who was going to be the guy to dethrone him.
Yeah.
He was that good as a heel. You thought that Joe Blow from Kokomo, your local wrestler, was going to beat the pants out of the NWA champion. But Pierce always had a way of coming out on top, and Pierce's ring work always made you believe that your boy was going to win.
He was very much that same vein as Ric Flair in the 80s. And again, I'm sure we'll get to Flair here in a moment. But anyway.
Actually, that's such a great segue, because my number two.
Oh, okay. Now I'm curious. Okay, carry on.
Is Ric Flair.
Okay.
With 10 reigns totaling 3,116 days, you'd be hard-pressed to not consider Ric Flair the greatest of all time.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
You know, there's a couple of reasons why Ric Flair is my number two and not my number one. One of them is the questionability of some of his reigns, because you always seem to have phantom reigns and reigns, you know, that lasted less than 24 hours, and then all of a sudden he was appointed the belt back to him.
Right.
There was always controversy going on with reigns during his championship runs.
Okay.
And then there was also always the backstage drama.
Oh yeah.
Granted, most of that happened more so in WCW after distancing himself from the NWA and the NWA from World Championship Wrestling. But you know, there was all of that stuff going on too.
I feel absolutely.
But the main reason he's not my number one is because even Ric Flair himself always wanted to be my number one. Harley Race. Despite having less reigns than Flair, with less total days as the champ than Flair, as he only held the belt for 1,801 days. Race is the champ that Flair always wanted to be. And you can kind of get a good look there and see some of the signatures on the strap. Now that it's held up and opened up.
Right. Nothing good wants to have that, baby.
Hey. So there we go. My top 10 NWA World Heavyweight Champions of all time. Before I turn it over to Jeff, before we do I got to know, are there any surprises, any that I left off that you're kind of shocked that I left off? Any that I included that you're like, wow, I'm kind of surprised that person made your list, but your reasons, you know, I feel you on your reasons for why they're there. Curious here, Professor.
Honestly, with your list, nothing really surprised me, and I will. People say, "Well, you look awfully shocked when he put Harley ahead of Flair." It's like I was, but again, like you just said, your reasons were sound, and you know, I'll talk more about both those guys here momentarily after the break here, but Harley and Rick, you know, really helped define the championship when it needed to be ID'd, defined properly, because Vince was coming up hot on the heels of the NWA and ready to take over the world. So you needed a Harley Race and a Ric Flair to battle the championship to keep the strength. So it's very, very easy to go 1A, 1B with Harley and Rick when it comes to the NWA championship. So I'll get into that momentarily. But before we do that, before we do the whole switcheroo here, I want to give a throw out to a brief commercial break.
Thank you very much, Jeff, for airing that trailer, showing all of the fans out there what's going on. Christmas is the most wonderful time of year, and it's always been my favorite time of the year. I know it's your favorite time of year. Aside from the wrestling, that's where we've always bonded the most.
I was going to say, Disney and Christmas, I think, really bonded us tightly after wrestling kind of brought us together. It was the Disney and Christmas ties that really wove through our friendship and our brotherhood over the years. I guarantee, he's wearing a Santa hat. I got Christmas timey. He is already thinking about October next year. He's already percolating what he's going to throw at you guys for 31 days of horror next year. Guarantee it, brother.
I have already begun planning next year.
So have I.
In my day planner.
Oh, yeah.
And have at least the first 3 or 4 months.
Nice.
Pretty planned out.
Yeah. And again, we didn't get together because off air, obviously, because I've got the entire year of dads already listed out. So we have to try to sync up what Renegade's showing that month with what we're doing on dads. We've got May figured out pretty well by now, but other than that, we're like, we'll figure it out. But we'll get there when we get there. Right now, I am.
Know what we're cooking, Jeff?
Oh yeah, definitely, absolutely. Definitely be
and that's all we have to say about that right now.
That's right. You have to just not be so furious with us as we don't go fast to get to May. Anyway, damn.
Anyway. It'll definitely be a journey once we get there, though.
Okay, the puns are gonna get really bad really quick. So I'm just gonna move along before I get too stupid. Okay,
moving right along.
That's it. And we're in the Muppets. There we go.
Turn left when you get to the fork in the road. Kermit. All right.
Thank God for the Muppets. Anyway, all right, and if you believe that, don't unsub. Just go ahead and move on for the day. Anyway, Lordy. So for my list, again, I do have 10 people, 10 gentlemen who held the championship. It was just hard for me to rank, and I say that because most of the people that I'm going to present here, neither one of us saw live as the champion during their reigns because we weren't fans or we weren't even born for some of these. So it's hard to really rank them in terms of a modern, for me, in terms of a modern day, ranking qualification, I guess. But I feel they belong on the list. Yours was very stat laden, and I love that you did that, and I appreciate that. Mine's more of a, okay, this champion made an impact on me, or retrospectively got into my brain as one of the best of the list, so that's why he's here. So that's kind of where I'm coming from as I go along here.
Makes perfect sense. I tried to channel my inner stat boy and my inner professor because I wanted to have more to talk about than, oh, my number 3 is Adam Pearce, and he's a cool guy. He rode in our van. My number 2.
Right, exactly.
I wanted to have a little bit more that I could go in depth upon and then give
definitely
for you to maybe help expound upon with me in case you didn't have them on your list.
Which happened quite a bit, so I appreciate it. So that was good.
It was surprisingly easy for me to come up with 10 and then to rank the 10.
Right.
Because I knew once I had the first 8 that I wrote down.
Right.
I knew Harley, Flair, and Pierce were going to be my top 3.
Okay.
I knew I was going to have the NWAs closer to the bottom half of the list.
Mm-hmm.
Then it just became a matter of the other ones and cut and paste where I felt they deserved to go.
Makes sense to me.
I was very surprised at how easy this one went for me.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Within about 10 minutes, I had my list and I had them ranked.
That's awesome, man. And that's, again, considering how, yes, we got a lot of exposure to NWA in the last 10 years or so, but considering how small an amount of time that is in the title's history, that's awesome that you did that back quickly.
And
That's
a
really
lot of
great.
that,
I love that.
a lot of that is due to you and my years knowing you, not to blow smoke. A lot of it is due, like I said, to the network and the PWI almanacs.
Oh yeah.
Man, when I first got into wrestling, that was my Bible. I carried that with me. I read pay-per-view results and studied on it. And part of that is due to the man who gave me my first PWI almanac, Bruce. Because before there was the professor in my life educating me on classic wrestling, there was Bruce.
Oh,
for those of you that don't know who Bruce is, Bruce, along with Statboy, are probably my two longest tenured friends.
Definitely.
We go back to the mid-90s in college.
Oh, yeah.
Bruce is the godfather to my daughter. Like, that is Bruce. So between Bruce and Jeff, and to a lesser extent Mike, because he never really had the NWA knowledge. He was WWF.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
And that almanac.
It's funny. As you said, you're talking about that. I'm looking at my bookshelf across the room in the office here. I don't know where they got or how they got where they got. I found the entire history of the PW Almanac. I bought that for every year. There's a stack about this high on my bookshelf across the office from me. And I just look, I go, God, man, like that was our Wikipedia for wrestling before Wikipedia for wrestling was a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, stats.
Legit.
I mean,
before WWE put out the WWE Encyclopedia.
Yeah.
There was the PWI Almanac, which didn't just cover WWF, WWE.
Oh, no.
It had NWA, it had WCW, it had AWA, it had ECW, it had New Japan, it had All Japan, it had AAA. It had every major card in there.
Like I got all it's all there with my king. Like I can see it. I just want to go grab it and go, look at this is my history. Just so great. And that exactly you said that filled in the blanks for me prior to 1990 when I became a fan. And like you said, Mikey is a WWF guy. So was I. You know, I didn't know about the NWA until Ric Flair, you know, brought this thing on the WWF tilt. What is that? That's not Hogan's belt. What is that? And you know, off the races we went with the big gold, of course, over our fandom history, you and I. But yeah, so that almanac champion, the real world champion. That's right. And we will definitely get to that. A couple of those people that called himself the real world champion as we go along here. So for me, the first person I want to talk about is somebody that, if nothing else, if he gets no other recognition in the history of being on this list, he is the guy that ended the final reign of somebody that, you know, is in the discussion of the greatest NWA champions of all time. Because in 1966, Lou Thez dropped the championship to Gene Kiniski. And for Gene to be champion in 1966, he reigned for almost 3 years. And he had a proverbial stranglehold on the championship. He, you know, was a proud Canadian champion. He was one of those guys where, you know, he was a Canadian first and a wrestler second type, very much a Lance Storm type, right? So he very much took his entire 1,131 days as champion and made that championship his own. He was so proud of that. And in kayfabe descriptions later on in life, he did an interview that ended up on the History of the World Title DVD that WWE produced a few years back, and talked about that he, you know, usually it was used to 2 out of 3 falls matches and let it slip that he lost the first fall to Dory Funk Jr., who, and it was a 1 fall match. Mental lapse, as he called it in kayfabe terms, but he, like I said, he reigned for 1,131 days. So, you know, in a time, we look now at, you know, Nick Aldis just passed 1,000 not too long ago as NWA champion in his second reign. You know, it was commonplace back then. You figure the guys that have been champion for 1,000 days, only 3 of them came in the quote unquote modern era. So for Gene Kiniski to be in that upper echelon, the 9 different people that have held the championship cumulatively for 1,000 days, and it was just one reign. That's big. That's a major champion, a major milestone for the championship as well. And for it to be held by a guy who, wasn't born in the United States, and it was the United States based world championship, it was huge for the NWA to elect to not only have Lou lose, because Lou didn't lose. He just didn't. And that was a huge thing. That's why the WWE came into being. AWA came into being, because Lou wouldn't drop the championship, or Pat O'Connor would drop the championship, those guys. So Gene Kiniski is one of those guys where he legitimately got the nod to defeat Lou Thesz. Can't say much more about that on an NWA championship list than that. So the next guy on my list, again, he is one of those guys who did not reach 1,000 days, despite having 2 different reigns. He was only at 866 total, but he is a guy that is very much synonymous with the championship depicted on my pip here, the championship underneath me as I speak, and the one I'm bringing into the shot right now. He was the first NWA World Champion to win the 10 pounds of gold. And he did it in a little town that nowadays produces cheating baseball teams. Not
Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, right?
No. This actually happened for real. Much like the Houston Astros cheating. Anyway, I'm talking about 1973, July 20th, the same day in history where man first walked on the moon. 4 years later, Jack Briscoe became the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And, I mentioned Lou Thesz when I'm talking about Gene Kiniski. Jack very much points to Lou Thesz as his idol, the reason he got into wrestling was because of Lou Thesz. And Jack Briscoe carried himself in the vein of Lou Thesz as a world champion, showing up in suits and, ridiculously expensive shoes, and, carrying the title in the Halliburton and things like that. He was the world champion. And yeah, it was only 866 days, 866 days, but the entire year, calendar year of 1974, he was the world champion, other than the brief blips with Giant Baba in All Japan. And, again, Giant Baba, wrestling skill put aside, always it's an honorable mention, because it was him that brought the championship to Japan, and he got the proverbial, okay, well, here's your courtesy rub, because you allowed us to come in here, so here you go, thank you, we appreciate that, Baba, type thing. But Jack, I mean there you see it, the original, the red strap, if you will, that modern day champions held it like Pierce just lament how ugly that thing is, and I don't disagree with it. But Jack made you believe that he was a legitimate badass and a legitimate fighter, and only doesn't get maybe enough credit because, circumstances being what they were, he was not allowed to defeat the next guy on my list. He had to go through an intermediary because of political upheaval within the alliance between Jack Briscoe's side, which was Eddie Graham, and the other side, the man who, other than Lou Thesz, has the longest singular reign as the world's champion. He was champion for almost 4 years. I think it was over 4 altogether. 1,563. You mentioned him. I mentioned him in passing kind of earlier. Dory Funk Jr. Again, he beat Gene Kiniski in 66, and he didn't drop the championship until, 1969. Excuse me. He beat Gene Kiniski 69 and didn't drop it until May of 73. It was supposed to be Jack Briscoe. That was what had been laid out. That is what has been talked about all these years. And the accident in the truck on the ranch being what it was or wasn't. But Dory was that traveling champion. Dory, like I said, he took what is now called the crown jewel belt all over the world, and he was a solid NWA champion. He was a man's man. He still is a man's man to this day. You challenge Dory Funk now, he'll still whoop your ass. And so will his brother, who's middle-aged and crazy for 50 years now. And Terry's not on my list, but we both love Terry. We both, interacted with Terry. He's insane, but we love him. So it's just the Funks definitely have a place in my heart, and Dory on this list because a great champion that he was for, like I said, 4 years. Back then, up until Hogan became champion, you didn't hear of a 4-year champion, post Lou Thesz. So great stuff there. All right, now we're gonna get some people you actually have heard of, if you've been a fan of modern wrestling, or if you've seen recent videotape. This next guy is only so low on the list because of what I said earlier, the fact that he had commitments elsewhere, and you're going to see that reflected in this picture very much so. Dan the Beast Severn, I mean, NWA champion, UFC super fight champion. He's got 3 UFC belts there and an NWA championship, and Jim Cornette behind him on WWF TV. If that isn't a carny freaking gimmick picture, I don't know what the hell is. My goodness. Jim Cornette is a manager, multiple championships, the WWF set behind him. Jiminy Christmas, what a freaking work. But like you said earlier, 1,559 altogether, including a reign that lasted just over 1,000 days on its own between 95 and 99. And yeah, he was UFC then. Yes, he wasn't defending the championship a hell of a whole lot, but he would bring the 10 pounds of gold to the octagon. You saw the NWA championship held by a man who was going into those shoot fights and either beating the shit out of or getting the shit beat out of him. And yes, he made the NWA champion a legitimate fighter because he was. After the days of Lou Thesz, who was a legitimate hooker, shooter, whatever you want to call him, everything, was very much more work than shoot. Dan Severn went, I can do both. And he did very well. The only reason he was not the initial TNA NWA champion is because of UFC commitment that he had. MMA for sure. It may not have been UFC, but it was definitely MMA. Otherwise we have Dan Severn be the NWA's champion in TNA. So, him being recognized as the guy that they wanted to go with and couldn't speaks volumes to me personally.
Yeah. And like I said on my list, nothing taken away from Ken Shamrock.
No.
Because I love Shamrock.
I do too.
When I first started watching UFC back in the days, Shamrock was there. Shamrock, Royce Gracie, Dan Severn. When I transitioned to WWF, Shamrock was there, baby, getting that IC title in the tournament, like I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
Shamrock becoming TNA champion is everything they were hoping for what Severn had done, and it just didn't work.
No, and
Shamrock was just too far past his prime at that point.
I was going to say, remember, Dan held the NWA championship at a time where he was still in fighting prime, not sports entertainment prime, fighting prime. Shamrock wasn't in his fighting prime, I dare say, when he became Intercontinental champion. He had already transitioned himself away from that. So, to be out of fighting prime and then be past sports entertainment prime by that point in 2002, yeah, it was destined to fail. And again, not shitting on Ken. It was just the right booking at the wrong time for TNA to put the belt on him, which is why Truth got it. And damn it, Truth is a great champion for what he was. Again, not on my list, but I think we talk enough about Ron on this list where everybody knows we both love Ron Killings. So, we purposely stayed after in San Diego just to see Truth. I mean, for real. So, we love Ron, and we will always acknowledge the awesomeness that was the Truth. All right. So the next guy, we talked about him a few minutes ago. We've been talking about him all show, it feels like, because he was the perennial NWA champion in the era of TNA. I said it when you showed the picture of him, the chosen one. 6 times you said NWA champion, and I mean just over 1,000 days total, 1,006 days. 1 day shy of 1 week past 1,000. That's a long time when you figure it was only a 4-year period.
Yeah.
You figure 1,000 days, that's just over 2.5 years. So for the first 4 years of TNA's existence, Jarrett was champion for half the time. And again, how do you argue with booking yourself as champion? You're not leaving the company. You're not going to go to WWE. Your money's just as much in this as your dad's or Dixie's or whoever. Your ass is on the frying pan as much as anybody else's. So why not make sure you're the champion? Make sure your champion's not going to go anywhere.
Exactly. And
number one,
I forgot to point out how much I was in Mark mode in that picture. You look at me in my Listen Up Slapnuts t-shirt,
which is so
carrying my guitar with the NWA title.
Oh man.
Like I remember that event. It was at the LA Convention Center.
Yep.
It was a Comic-Con, and there was, the table down for the Spike booth where the NWA TNA talents were sitting for the autographs. And then up above, there was like a little stairwell that led up, and there was like a little office, if you will, a green room where the people kind of hung out before they came down for their signings. And Jeff was up there kind of like checking out the line because he's full on heel mode at this point,
Oh yeah.
Who's going to come out there for Jeff Jarrett? And he looks down, and I know he saw me because he pointed right at me. My Slapnuts t-shirt, holding my guitar and the NWA title in the air.
Yeah, baby.
And almost like he was telling the executives, like, do you see how over I am? I am a heel, and this guy is out here in his Slapnuts shirt and guitar.
You can't, and again, you mentioned the champions being the heel that you just wanted the babyfaces to just obliterate. Jarrett was that guy in a nutshell. Bound for Glory, where Sting beat him for the 10 pounds of gold, was like every babyface fan's wet dream come true. Like, finally! Because Jarrett was never champion after that, if you recall. That was his last NWA championship reign, was the loss to Sting at Bound for Glory. So, I mean, granted, he was King of the Mountain champion after that and the whole GFW, whatever. But, Jarrett as the NWA champion very much was the early identity of TNA wrestling.
Yeah. And if you want more history about it, I cannot recommend his podcast, My World, enough.
No.
I feel like we're here shilling right now, but
we
seriously,
should be.
Go to YouTube, or if you're on ad-free shows, go to ad-free shows and listen to the My World podcast every week. There's only one episode I haven't listened to, watched yet, and that's because it was the watch-along of the first TNA pay-per-view. And trying to sync everything up is just too much work for me. But every other episode I have tuned into. Hell, truth be told, I'm usually writing one of my reviews notes while listening to My World.
Yeah,
so
it's
for a guy who does not tune in on a weekly and watch the product to be able to speak this highly of a podcast, the only podcast wrestling wise that I follow aside from watching this man's stuff.
Right.
That tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, I can't recommend Conrad's stuff enough, but each of them have their own identity. If you're not an Every Show subscriber, it's okay. We still love you. I'm sure Conrad still likes you to a certain extent. But each of them have their own identity. And Jarrett, My World is just, you remember, Jarrett's been around a lot longer than people really process. He was the Intercontinental Champion 25 years ago. Like more than a quarter century ago. He was a rookie many years before that. Jarrett's literally seen it all and done it all. And the fact that his world championship reigns are quote unquote marred by, oh, he was Russo's guy. Oh, he owned the company. Bullshit. Is, I dare say, sorry kids, sorry YouTube, is fucking bullshit. Jarrett is one of the best guys to ever step between those ropes. Yes, his daddy financed TNA. Yes, Vince Russo was booking WCW. But you know what? You can't make somebody your champion, family or not, friend or not, if you can't rely on them to be that guy, to be the world heavyweight champion. Jarrett's a 9-time world champion, 10 if you count outside of WCW and TNA. So, and for the longest time, he was the most prolific Intercontinental Champion, which is the workhorse title, kids. And again, we're showing on Jeff here, but damn it, he should be showed on more often.
And Hall of Famer.
And he's a Hall of Famer, exactly. He's one of the
For
few
TNA and WWE.
I was going to say, he's one of the few that's both Impact and WWE Hall of Fame. I'm pretty sure he's in Meltzer's Hall of Fame, but that's Meltzer, so screw him. Gotta get in at least once a week. Anyway,
it's kind of like our F-bomb. Where's it gonna fall?
That's it. Well, we'll see. The F-bomb and the Meltzer jokes have kind of supplanted the Sid joke, because the Sid joke just kind of ran itself into the ground, kind of like Sid's leg ran itself into the mat. Anyway, so damn, we're just getting all kinds of hell. Anyway, where the hell was I? Oh yeah, okay. So
we finished talking about Jarrett. Moving along.
There we
from
go.
Him.
All right, there we go. So now, okay, this last guy I'm going to talk about before I get into my personal favorites, if you will. Like everything up here has been about stats, been about, credibility and whatever. This guy, when you talk about stats and you talk about credibility as NWA champion, there is no starting point without Lou Thesz being the champion. And that picture screwed up. Great. I thought I cropped enough, but I didn't. It's okay. You have to remember something about Lou. I don't know if you know this, Jay. When he became the National Wrestling Alliance champion in 1949, he was already the National Wrestling Association champion and a few other belts along the way. He was supposed to face the initial NWA champion, National Wrestling Alliance champion, Orville Brown, in a unification match and lose. But because Orville had this ungodly car accident the month that the match was supposed to take place, the Alliance kind of went, all right, we'll go with Lou, see how it goes. And man, how did it go? 3,749 days in 3 reigns as the Alliance's champion. Here's how far back Lou's history goes with the championship and the Alliance and wrestling period. The week after, 1 week exactly after he first lost the Alliance championship to Whipper Billy Watson, 7 days later was my dad's birthday. That's how far back this championship goes. That's how far back this brand goes. And that's how credible Lou Thesz was. He was a straight up hooker / shooter, whatever you want to call it. His book's called Hooker, so that's why I mentioned that. No, he wasn't a prostitute, technically.
I know what hooker means.
Yeah.
You might want to go ahead and define it for our younger fans. The
very much
era of fan, if you will.
Yeah, very much the same vein as shooter. Like he was a great worker. Yeah, he was a worker, but if he needed to get down and dirty, he could. And Lou could, very much so.
Hookers and shooters were usually the type of guys that got thrown in the ring when you needed to punish a talent.
Right. Yeah. If there's talent out of hand, or if you had a match set up where you knew the fans were going to get rowdy, throw the hookers and shooters in there, and you're good to go. And Lou was that guy. And I'll put it to you this way, and it was mentioned on the History of the Championship DVD that this was the case, and I didn't really think about it until years later. I actually looked at the stats. Lou Thesz was on television, more prolific on television, especially here in LA and other major markets, more than Milton Berle, more than Superman, more than Lucille Ball. Okay? If you're on TV in the 50s more than Lucy, you legit. I'm just saying. And the fact is, his workouts, when he was going to fight Baron Michel Leone out here in Los Angeles, he'd work out at Venice Beach, brother, at the Gold's Gym down there, sold out on the beach, and the ratings for KCOP, Channel 13, through the roof. The workouts, not even the fight. The workouts on Channel 13 would be, the proverbial 8.1 for This Is Your Life for Rocky and Mankind Now. Like just bing. Lou Thesz drew money. Gotta come back next week. Dude, he came back every friggin' week for 3,000 something days over the course of the 3 reigns. He was, for my dad's generation, if you were on this side of the country, the world's champion, the legitimate champion of champions over Bruno. Although by the time Bruno came along as champion, Lou was already starting to wind down in the 60s, even though he didn't retire till 1990. So there you go. Talk about Terry Funk being legend crazy. Lou Thesz was awesome and an athlete, but he was still crazy wrestling for 30 more years afterwards. Lou Thesz made this championship the most coveted championship in sports. And I say that, yes, it's sports entertainment. It's not real. It's predetermined. I get it. But when you figure that, wrestling was not on TV a hell of a whole lot prior to Lou Thesz being the champion, and all of a sudden every market wanted wrestling because of Lou Thesz.
Says all you need to say right there.
It really does. I mean, the advent of television in the 50s correlated with Lou Thesz being champion. So it was just a marriage made in heaven. It really was.
And full disclosure, I really did contemplate putting Lou Thesz on my list, but sure. I knew I was not going to be able to talk about him at the extent that you would, and had a pretty good gut feeling that he was going to be on your list. Yes. So that's why I left him off.
Yeah. And again, it's so funny for me to hear on a WWE DVD and read in a book, KCOP. It's like, that's our station. That's our channel. Because KCOP, KTTV, KTLA, man, those were our jam back when we were kids and when our parents were kids. Yeah. So, before, NBC, CBS, and ABC took over the world, man, we had KTTV, KCOP, and KTLA, baby. That's what we had. 2 through 13 for life, brother. If you know, you know. So now we're getting to the point where I've seen these guys or met these guys or interviewed these guys, and they're just awesome favorites of mine. And for the record, I will go back to Dan briefly here because Dan Severn was the first ever guest I had as a interview subject. So I will forever appreciate Dan Severn and his contribution to my career doing this crazy shit I do now. So thank you, Dan. Love to have you back on at some point. I know you're going to be in the area here soon-ish. So as we tape this, it's already happened if you're watching this. So hopefully I got to go out there. Anyway, because it's him and Shamrock both. So, ooh, right? That's what I said. That's kind of why I wanted the belt in a hurry. All right. So we'll go with this one first. Okay. So we mentioned at the top how the NWA has been very much on a roller coaster of a life cycle. There have been times where the NWA was higher than high. I mentioned Lou Thesz being the champion and getting TV ratings in the 50s. There have been times where the NWA, it looked like they were going to call Jack Kevorkian in for help. Put it that way. And 4 years ago, Billy Corgan, William Patrick Corgan, if you will, of the Smashing Pumpkins, and his Lightning One production company decided they wanted to do a deep deep dive and go all in on the NWA Championship. And Billy, who had a tumultuous relationship with Impact Wrestling prior to this, and it's very much a heel nowadays, thank God. Also an ECW fan, very much a friend of Paul Heyman's back in the day. Was at ECW shows all the time. Huge WWF fan to this day, WWE fan to this day. He took a chance. He really did, and bought the brand out of, I don't know if it was bankrupt, morally bankrupt for sure. But financially they were having trouble. And at the time, Tim Storm, who was in his late 50s then, he's still in his late 50s, I think he's close to 60 now, was the guy that the previous management had anointed the champion. And Tim was a wonderful NWA champion. He carried that championship with distinction, pride, and honor. And the first time I saw him defend the championship in person after Billy had made the purchase was, of course, for our buddy Dave Marquez out in Port Hueneme. And the man who he controversially defeated that night in Port Hueneme would go on to defeat him later in 2017. And over the course of 2 reigns, hold the championship for 1,309 days. He is a national treasure. He is the dealer. And check out that referee bookend on there, if I will, for a moment. The Hebners bookending him as champion at NWA 70 when he defeated Cody to regain the championship and start that 1,000+ day reign. Nick Aldis. And again, for whatever reason, Nick has me blocked on Twitter. I don't know why, but I truthfully don't. And I still feel that he is the greatest NWA champion in the post TNA era. I stand by that. And I honestly feel that if he's not the champion the last almost 4 years total, the NWA doesn't thrive as much as it really is. And granted, we had a pandemic in us last year, so he wasn't on a lot. He didn't work a lot. But the content put out by the Alliance and by Lightning One with him holding the 10 pounds of gold was golden material, and it worked. So I think his personality combined with his unbelievable wrestling skills really helps the brand along in what could have been a big death knell with the pandemic hitting them right as they started getting, fire under their cells again. So I will forever sing Nick's praises, and if I ever find out why I got the block, I will gladly atone for that sin, because it hurts that the NWA's greatest champion of the modern era doesn't think enough of my opinion to see his stuff on his timeline.
I find it a little shocking that you put him over Pierce.
Well, again, both of them, and since you brought him up, Nick's next on my list. Adam is next on my list. And I don't know why I picked that picture, because Marquez's face looks like Adam tracked something into the studio. Anyway, Jesus, what you bringing here? Jesus Christ, Pierce, what the hell did you walk into? Anyway, Adam was champion, unfortunately. Once Marquez and his brand separated from the NWA, Adam was in a no-win scenario because of working with, I'm trying to get sued here. The people that took over for Trobich and Marquez and them, that management team between 2012 and 2017, train wreck, complete train wreck. And Adam felt he had to leave the title behind, and he did, to his credit. He and Colt, had that legendary 7 levels of hate, and just decided that, management is what they are. We're not dealing with it. Neither one of them wanted to be champion under that management structure. And good on them for making that choice. Colt made his way back to NWA. Eventually he became national champion. He's been involved in the brand before he went to AEW. Adam, man, he doubled down on himself, stepped away, and is now a producer in WWE and a tremendous on-screen talent as the authority figure. I love what Adam's doing right now. So, and this will forever be one of my favorite pictures of all time. And yes, that's the old belt. Like you said about yours, that's the razor belt, if you will. But again, I state that everything happens for a reason. I had to sell that belt to make rent, but I also had to sell that belt so I could get away from the no grommets version and end up falling into having this come across my way. So, but yeah, that picture with Adam at Mach 1, John Ian, God bless him, for letting you and I both, have the access we did to that company and that brand.
Yeah.
This was the night that he faced TJ Perkins, TJP, for the championship. And, to be near the championship belt that basically went through the TNA years and have it be that close to me was just, you talk about mark out moment. I'm marking out in this picture because I'm wearing Angel stuff at Anaheim. So, and a Johnny Ian show. So duh. But, yeah, this is your, serious, serious, but inside I'm going like an idiot.
Exactly.
So we both came into being fans as WWF fans, right? And by the time you came in, Severn was bringing this championship onto WWF television. So we knew of the NWA and the championship and the lineage to a certain extent, but man, to literally be that close on a monthly, sometimes for us, weekly basis was extraordinary.
Yeah, because Mach 1 would do Friday night fights. Every Friday they would have a show.
Yeah, and Pierce wouldn't come in every week, or whoever wouldn't come in every week, but he'd venture down there, once a month or so, and to see him there and to see him in Hollywood / Glendale / Port Hueneme was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because of Pierce that I became such a NWA fan. So I will, as much as I rank Aldis's reigns and help with the brand higher than Adams, I rank Adam Pierce will forever be, unless something drastic happens with the geography of this country and my standing in it, Adam Pierce will be the greatest NWA World Heavyweight Champion I saw defend and lose the championship. Period. He is that guy for me. So there you go. Okay, now I'm all weepy and shit. All right, so the last two are your last two. For me, they can be 1A, 1B. I'm sure for you had Harley higher because you had Harley higher, and I don't discount that, but I rank Harley here first because so many people I know rank Harley as the greatest NWA champion of all time, including you just a few moments ago, right? Ric Flair, I feel, when you say the letters NWA to a not necessarily casual, but to a not quite dialed in as us wrestling fan, when you say NWA, you hear that woo. You see those robes. You see both the 10 pounds of gold and the big gold around that waist in the air. And by the way, that picture you used, I love you use that picture, the same one I'm using there with the 10 pounds of gold, because Lou Thez is the referee. And that's just so great that Lou Thez was the referee to hold up Ric Flair's hand the first time. That, for me, is such a beautiful moment in history. The fact that up till that point, the greatest NWA champion of all time was the one to kind of pass that torch, if you will, to the man who I feel is the greatest of all time, NWA champions wise.
It's the circle of life.
It really is. And when you think about it, Flair was in attendance when Pierce and Brent Albright had their wars because he was working with Ring of Honor at the time. Kind of, sort of. And when you think about it, what's so funny now, Pierce was around when Pierce was the champion during the 7 Levels of Hate. They all just kind of pass to each other. And I love that about the lineage where, because NWA has been such a troubled is a rough word, but a controversial and interesting path we've woven the last 73 years. You can see the transition. You can see the moments in history that the torch is being passed. And like I said, that picture with Lou and Ric Flair is just one of the best pictures of all time. And Ric Flair is the greatest of all time, in my opinion. Adam will always be my favorite. The greatest I ever saw defend the championship live. But as we said at the top, we definitely honorable mention every other guy.
Yeah.
Every single person from Orville Brown all the way to the man, as of this taping, Trevor Murdoch. So, and you and I have seen Trevor Murdoch in person back in 2003 era when he was, the World Tag Team Champion on Raw. So, for him to be where he is now is too freaking cool for school. And I'm so proud to be a Trevor Murdoch fan. I'm proud to be an NWA fan. And I am more than overjoyed the fact that you and I got to really get our NWA education, on the front lines pretty much together, you and I, just in the fat of the fire. It was so great to see that in person.
Most definitely. Most definitely. I kind of wish that the NWA champion would come out here a little bit more.
Yeah.
Maybe now that things are lifting back up, that's very, very possible in the foreseeable future. Because I definitely would like to get out there and see the NWA World Heavyweight Championship get defended again.
Yeah, it's been a long time in person.
Definitely. Ever since Championship Wrestling from Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean,
the Glendale Studios.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I like I said, I was there, when Billy had his first match he promoted between Storm and Aldis. So it's been 4 years, which I mean, like I said, longer for you, like we said, but 4 years is a long time to go between seeing your favorite championship be defended.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bitch. So hopefully the pandemic starting to depressurize, if you will. We'll get the 10 belts to go back out here. And man, that brand is so strong right now. You've got, the world's champion, the world tag team champions. You've got women's champion, the women's tag team champion for the first time since the early 80s and late 70s, I think even. So, that brand is, even though it is a definitely television centric product right now, they're starting to tour. They're starting to move. They were in St. Louis for the anniversary. So, there may be
to see an NWA Legends Fest.
Oh God. Right.
With everybody who is still alive and capable that has been an NWA champion of some sort, whether it's tag or world or whatever.
Yep.
And you could even make the fest travel and hit all the major venues throughout the country, Hit the Grand Olympic out here in LA.
Right.
For old time, hit St. Louis, hit New York, hit Florida.
Yeah.
Texas.
Yep.
Hit all those major markets that when the territories were up and popping, the NWA champion would have traveled to.
I was going to say, you mentioned all those territories. You figure the WWE championship, the championship in wrestling right now, or sports entertainment right now, the Impact title, the AEW title, all those championships to some degree or another owe everything, their very existence, to this, to the big gold, to the crown jewel, whatever you want to, to these three letters right here. without the NWA championship, there is no WWE, let alone the championship. There is no TNA wrestling early on, because the Jarretts made the decision they made to license. The business that we cover on this network every single day is in direct correlation, direct lineage to those 3 letters and this 10 pounds right here. That is the statement that, end of tweet type thing. That's the sentence. Without the NWA, there is no championship network. So,
period.
But as we say at the end of every show, subjective. What'd you guys think? If you've been watching over there next to Jay and next to me when I was over there, let us know what you think in the comments. Down here, of course, if you're watching on demand, we appreciate that. And we definitely appreciate you sticking with the network the entire year. I mean, it's almost, it's behind me. It's on JJ's head and that awesome shirt that he wears. I love that shirt. And again, I love it. You guys are commenting along on demand or over there, wherever you're watching. I appreciate it. But in 2 weeks, man, we're coming back with something that it's Christmas time. We love Christmas, Jay and I both. I mean, he's got the whole decor out on his head, on his shirt. I got Main Street USA behind me.
I've got my tree up already, Jeff.
I know you got your tree. I know. My tree's over there. Just my artificial tree's just sitting there with no lights on. It's so sad and lonely over there right now. But
you've got the Main Street tree.
That's very true. Very true. We're taping in October if you didn't remember that, guys. So this one's gonna be a little different for Christmas this year because we've done Christmas movies in the past and we've done Christmas songs, and if we did Christmas movies every year, Hallmark gives us a great amount to work with, but that's all year.
I mean, they're airing stuff like this, which granted I'm not covering it this month, but I'm sure down the road a piece I'll give this a look. I mean, hell, Joey Lawrence, Bill Engvall, Lee Allen Baker from Good Luck Charlie. Where are you going to go wrong?
And
pretty good cast.
Yeah, and were it not for the people that had the family come back together in San Francisco, Candace Cameron's career would be just fine because the Hallmark Channel, Christmas songs, movies. There you go. But
she's actually got a new one premiering this year with John Botherton, who played Matt on Fuller House. So if you're Team Matt, him and her have a Christmas movie coming out this year.
This is your jam, kids. But JJ, what are we going to give him in 2 weeks here on the Dads? Not always on wrestling, because it's not wrestling this time.
Right. Well, what we're going to do is, instead of doing movies like we did last year, we're going to break down the top 10 Christmas specials and Christmas episodes. Now, you may ask yourself, what's the difference?
Right.
Okay. The Brady Bunch. I believe the episode's called The Voice of Christmas, where Carol Brady loses her voice. She has the laryngitis, as Cindy says, and she asks Santa to have Mommy get her voice back so she can sing on Christmas morning. That's a Christmas TV episode.
Okay.
The Christmas special, Charlie Brown Christmas. Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The Rankin Bass shows. Frosty, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Those are Christmas specials.
So,
they are not episodically tied into a specific series. They are just something special that airs around the holidays.
And if they're movie length, like those ones you talked about, the Rankin Bass and whatnot, they weren't theatrically released in their infancy.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Got it.
Those, I don't know if I'd say that they were movie length because they run about an hour on the long end. And you think theatrical, you think movie release, you usually think a minimum an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Granted, I covered some movies this past October for horror movies that ran closer to like an hour and 10 minutes.
Yes.
But different times as well.
Definitely.
Mickey's Christmas Carol does not count because it was theatrically released.
Yes, it's very true. Very true.
So you can also, counter argue that it was released as a short, I want to say before Fox and the Hound. Don't quote me on that. We can do our due diligence prior to
2 weeks from now.
Yeah. But I want to say it premiered before Fox and the Hound.
That sounds right.
But it's also shown on TV every year.
Right.
So is it a Christmas special? Is it not?
So, okay. Let me ask you this then.
You have that gray area there with that one.
Well, when we talk about gray area, we'll talk about gray hair. How about that? A Very Brady Christmas. Does that count, or is it a movie?
I consider it a movie because it's a full-length hour and a half movie.
Okay.
It's a made-for-TV movie.
Right. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
It's in the title there, made for TV
right.
movie.
All right. Fair enough.
When I think of a special, I usually think an hour or less.
Mm-hmm.
It can be animated or live action, doesn't matter.
Okay.
But it usually will hit about the hour mark. If you're going to about an hour and a half, then you're treading on movie turf. Okay. That's personal feelings from the guy that does a movie review show.
So, I was going to say, yeah, that's why I defer to you, because I would have easily.
I actually had a Very Brady Christmas was going to be something I covered for this month, but then I wasn't going to get the Santa Claus.
Oh, yeah, no.
Because I had Holiday Inn, White Christmas, and Very Brady Christmas. And I decided to push those to the side, do those next year, so that I could do the Santa Claus trilogy. Because I knew if you saw that trailer and you did not see Tim Allen as the Fat Man, I was going to be fired.
Well, but we established in October that doesn't matter because you don't get paid anyway. So that's how that works.
I was trying not to go there. But anyways,
this one live tape is fun,
that
kids.
Is how you define them. A Christmas episode is just what it says, a Christmas-themed episode of your favorite episodic weekly TV broadcast.
Be it 30 or 60.
Christmas special is something that does not fit into those confines.
Okay.
Like I said, Charlie Brown Christmas, Dr. Seuss' How the Grinch Stole Christmas from the 60s with Boris Karloff narrating it.
Right.
Those type of things.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, because I would have easily put Very Brady Christmas with that episode from the 60s because I love them both so much. But now I know the differences. So I appreciate the wisdom of the Christmas master. So
if you wanted to reference it when you talk about the Brady Bunch episode, since Very Brady Christmas does feature that as a flashback, by all means.
Yeah. And I still get verklempt when they're singing at that gate and they're all singing the same song together. It's just, but we'll get there. We'll get there. So again,
spoiler alert!
Yeah, right. Yeah, no kidding, right? So
coming back in 2 weeks since Jeff has already told you what he's going to be gushing over.
Yes, that's it. Gotta drop money. Come back next week. Something else. We're gonna talk about other stuff. Yeah, that. Again, thank you all for indulging us in our NWA championship list because I know that the WWE fans are like meh about the NWA, but we love it, and we know enough of you love it too. Where you've enjoyed this ranking, and we know you have opinions because there have been many other people besides the people on both these lists who have been champions. So let us know what you think. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks, right here on the Championship Network for our top 10 Christmas specials / episodes. Until then, he is the Renegade. I am the Meech, and we will see you guys next time right here on the Dads, not always on wrestling.